So let me dive straight into the presentation, right? So we start with, so today we want to talk about and understand business planning, the importance of business planning and how to communicate your business idea, right? But just before we do that, a quick brief about me. As Swaroop shared, I'm co-founder and chief executive at Client Joy. At Client Joy, we help agencies and freelancers grow, fulfill, and earn. We help them manage their complete client life cycle, starting from leads to proposals to projects, tickets, invoicing, and then finally payments. So all of their client life cycle kind of happens in one single place. I did my mechanical engineer from NIT Surat, and then I worked as an investment banker with Citigroup. I'm also an MIDX boot camper and CNBC TV in Young Turk. I write all of the things that I go through, the struggles and the win that we go through at Client Joy. I put all of that on yasha.in as well. So after this conversation, if you're free, if you're available, do check out both clientjoy.io and yasha.in. So having said that, I've divided today's conversation into four major parts, right? So the first is, why do we need to write a business plan? Followed by, what are some of the key elements of a business plan? Followed by, how do you communicate and present the business plan that you've created or the pitch that you've created? And then that we will follow that up with some of the questions that you guys might have, right? So let's go into first thing, which is, why should we write a business plan? Now, you may have heard other people say this, right? Entrepreneurs are doers. We build our parachute on our way down from a cliff. We work in terrible uncertainty, and we like uncertainty, and we want to just start working on things instead of wasting time writing plans and creating financial projections and creating all those PDF documents and so on and so forth. You may have heard a lot about this. You may have heard this in videos. You may have heard that both Google and Apple started in garages. They did not have business plans. And that is super wrong, right? I want to clarify that upfront, that it's a misconception, right? Almost everything that you do, it correlates with the plan that you have created. And we'll talk more about this as we go deeper into this conversation. But the first thing that I want to share with you is that do not start doing things and working on your idea before you start creating a business plan, because that way, and we'll go through some of the issues that may happen if you start doing that. But just know that it's very, very irresponsible if you start working on your idea without having a plan in place. So let's start with the first question, right? So why should we write a business plan? So it's important to understand that business plans are essentially like maps that show you possible routes to your destination, and so without a plan, you don't even have a destination, right? So so the first thing that any plan should have is, what's the destination, and then what could be the possible route or the path of least resistance to reach to that destination. If you do not have a plan, if you directly start building things and start implementing your idea, then you don't even know which direction should you head to, right? And so so a business plan, or any sort of a plan, it's not necessary that it's a presentation or a document or an Excel sheet. It could take shape of anything that you are comfortable with, right? But it should become a living document that guides you and guides your every move. And so, what do I mean by living document? So, so business plan is essentially, it's not something that you write once and then you forget about it. It's something that so at Client Joy, as an example, we look at our business plan every 3 months, right? So we look at what did we think 3 months ago when we were creating this document, and then what is the reality today, and then we adjust the business plan accordingly. And then we do this recurring exercise every 3 months, and then over a period of time we get a lot better at predicting the future, right? And so writing a business plan is essentially a practice or an exercise of predicting your own future, or your company or your startup or your idea's future. And so it should become a living doc. It's not something that you write once to submit to some competition. So that's the first thing. The second thing as to why should you write a plan is because it forms the link between whatever thing that you are implementing, or whatever thing that you are acting on today, and the performance that you are doing while you are acting on it. So let me explain to you an approach that every startup or early stage company or early stage idea or entrepreneurs should implement. And that is what we call as DIM approach, right? Just discovery, implementation, measurement. So discovery is basically where you spend a lot of time doing research, and this research is not sending out Google form links to your friends and then asking them to fill it out, so that you have 50 responses to show. This research is actually going out and talking to your potential customers who are going to pay you, right? At Client Joy, as an example, we spoke to more than 200 people in 33 companies in 14 different industry verticals to understand what their problem and pain points were and how were they solving it at that point of time. So that's basically the discovery part, and then comes the implementation part, which is implementation of your own solution. Now, given that most of us are either engineers or MBA or studying to become that, implementation is something that we'll not spend a lot of time on. But then the third and very important part that comes in is measurement, and this is something that a lot of entrepreneurs also forget. So when you're doing discovery and research, there are a lot of hypotheses that you will make, right? There are a lot of assumptions that you will write basis on the research that you do. Then you implement a solution to those problems that you have assumed, but then we forget to measure. So then the next step should be to measure whether there has been an impact of the solution that you implemented on the problem that you had discovered, right? And then you kind of keep on repeating this cycle. Now, if you want to repeat this cycle typically would take anywhere between a month to 6 months, right? Depending on the scale of the problem that you're solving. If you want to actually implement this approach, and if you want to link your action to your performance, you'll need to have a plan in place. So you'll need to look at a document that you had written 3 months ago, 6 months ago, to be able to say whether your assumptions were correct or not, whether you implemented the solution correctly or not, whether the measurement of data agrees with the hypothesis that you made at the start point. The third thing which is an important reason as to why do you write a business plan, is that if it doesn't work on paper, it won't work in real life, right? Making a business plan work on paper is by far the easiest thing that you can do. It's essentially, writing your cost, writing your expenses, writing your cost, writing your revenues, and then just scaling that across 3 or 5 year timeline. That's the first naive version of business plan that most people write. And if it still doesn't work, you know that you should not waste time into implementing this business plan into your real life. And that's a great time and energy and effort saver, right? So that's another reason as to why you should write your business plan. So just a very quick summary: business plan should become a living document that guides your every move. If the move that you're about to make has not been documented in the plan, you change the document and you add that move. And you should follow the discover, implement, and measure approach. Form the link between your action and performance, and just make sure that it at least works on paper, right? So the three key things as to why you should write a plan. So here are some questions that you should answer when you are creating your plan, right? And so it's always a good practice to start by writing some questions that you want your plan to answer. The first question is, what is the purpose of the plan that you are writing? Who is the reader of this plan? Are you writing this plan for yourself so that you have clarity? Are you writing this plan for your team members or for your colleagues, or for finding a co-founder? Or are you writing this plan for an investor where you're looking to raise funds? Or are you writing this plan to show to industry experts and mentors and potential customers to understand whether this is something that you should do or not? So that's the first question that you need to answer, right? What is the purpose of the plan that you are creating? The second question is, and so a lot of times the assumptions that we make are in our heads, but we never make it a point to document them. So create and write a list of all the assumptions that you are making, right? The journey of starting up is essentially the journey of validating and invalidating assumptions, right? If you don't have the list of assumptions that you started with, then you'll never know whether you validated something or invalidated something basis data that you gather over your journey. The third thing that your business plan should answer is what is the opportunity and who is your target customer, right? Define your so what's the opportunity that you're going after, how big is the opportunity, what does the market look like, what does building this product look like, if everything goes well, then financially what are the numbers that we are looking at, right? And then also define who your target customer is. So a good way to define your target customer is where you say, hey, my customer is probably this age, working in these designations, in these kind of companies, in these geographies, speaks these kind of languages, hears these things from their peers, feels this about the pain point, and so on and so forth. So create a target customer or a buyer persona, right? That's another important thing that your business plan should answer. The next question that it should answer is and it's important to remember the words that I've used, right? So it should answer, why should the competitors be wary of you? A lot of times the people that surround you will ask you, how is your idea unique, how are you different, what is different about the solution that you're bringing to market. And that's a trap, right? Have an answer prepared for that, but do not build anything that you want to build just because it is different or unique. Customers, your customers, potential customers, do not care whether your product is unique or not, whether your product is different or not. They care whether your product is better or not. And it's important to realize that unique is not always better, right? Um, you'll be able to think of a lot of examples. But one of the example is KRK is unique and is not better, right? Shah Rukh Khan is better, may not be as unique, right? And so it's important to also answer in your business plan as to why should your competitors be worried of you, and answer that in a way as to how are you better than your competitors that exist out there in the market, not necessarily unique or different. And the fifth point is fairly simple. How should the company operate? How does it make money? How does it make profit over a period of time? And this includes, where will you find people to work in your company? Where will you find if there are any raw materials involved? What are you going to source it from? If you're creating a tech product or a tech company, then where are you going to host it? What are going to be recurring costs that are associated with it, and so on and so forth, right? So these are like a group or category of 5 questions that your business plan must answer. Everything else is vanity, right? And we'll expand a lot more on this when we come to the pitch part or the communication of the business plan aspect of your company as well. But these are, generally speaking, the 5 key things that you should always include in a plan. So how should a business plan document look like, right? What are some of the key characteristics of a business plan document? And there are 3 kind of key characteristics, right? So the first is it has short sentences, right? It needs to it's not a novel, right? It's not a George R. R. Martin novel that needs a lot of adjectives, and it needs beautiful sentence structuring to kind of involve the reader and all of that. Any business book that you pick up, it will always have short, meaningful, useful sentences that are also simple. Make sure that the business plan looks clean. Make sure that people want to read your business plan. It's not full of a lot of content fixed in one place. And also make sure that your business plan is transparent. If your problem does not if your problem is not related to something, do not include that particular data point just because you think it's an exciting data point into your business plan. You keep it clean and transparent. The second key characteristic of a plan is that it includes key milestones and validation points, right? So it says, so any business plan should say that, hey, we're currently at 0 features in the product, 0 team members, 0 revenue in our company. However, 12 months from now, we are going to be at 5,000 users, 10 lakhs in total revenue, and 10 team members, right? And so it needs to have those, what are those key milestones, and let's say 25 features in the product. And so what are those key milestones and points where some of the questions kind of become irrelevant, right? So as an example, if you build the product, then the question whether you are the correct person to build the product or not becomes irrelevant. If you start acquiring customers, then the question whether you have a product market fit becomes irrelevant. If you start acquiring customers without any marketing, then the question on your distribution channels become irrelevant, right? And so those are basically your validation points. So what are those validation points where you are making certain questions that could have been asked at an earlier stage or have become irrelevant now? And then the third characteristic of a business plan is that just make sure that the forecasts that you create are realistic, right? When you extend that line on that Excel sheet with the same formula, just go to the 36th month, just go to the 48th month, just go to the 24th month, and see whether you'll be able to do 10 crores in revenue from like 50 lakhs in revenue 1 year ago, right? Whether you'll be able to do 50 crores in revenue from 2 crores in revenue a year ago. So just make sure, because things tend to compound on Excel sheets. So make sure that the forecasts that you create are realistic in nature and they're based on data. This data you'll be able to find of your competitors in a lot of different places. Primarily, what we would do is we would go to Ministry of Corporate Affairs (MCA) ka website, and then we'll download our competitors' balance sheet. We'll download our competitors' financial statements and whatever filings that they have done. And so that would tell us that, hey, they are these many people team. They must have spent this much amount on marketing, and this is the revenue that they are doing. Then these are the unit economics, and this is how it looks like, right? So make sure that your forecasts are realistic and they are based on data as well. So that kind of covers why you should write a business plan, and it also covers what are some of the key aspects and characteristics and questions that your business plan should answer. So moving on to the third part of the conversation today, which is how do you pitch like a professional, right? So once the plan is ready, communicating the plan is of course as important as writing it, and so how do you pitch like a professional? And so there are again certain things that you can look for, and so there are, firstly, let me tell you a couple of things that you should know, and that your idea is very important to you because you are the center of your own universe. Other people, much like you, are center of their own universes, right? And so they don't care about your idea. Your job when you're pitching is to make other people care. The whole job is to hold their attention and then get them to a next meeting, right? The goal of your pitching, the goal of presentation is to get another meeting. It is not to communicate everything all at once, right? So that's the most important thing, that other people do not care about what you do. And then let's break the pitching aspect down into four major parts, right? So the first is what should your pitch contain? So your pitch typically looks fairly simple. Who are you? I mean, it's a very basic introduction. What is the problem? The size and scale of the problem that you are trying to solve. How is it being currently solved? What are the current solutions to the problem that you have mentioned? And how is your solution better than the current solutions, right? So that's the first aspect, which is where you are making an argument. So this is the most subjective aspect of your pitch. This is where you need the other person. This is the part where you have to sell the other person, right? This is where they need to believe in the problem. They need to agree with you that the current solutions are not good enough, and they also need to believe that your solution is better, right? So this is the most subjective aspect, and this is where your argumentative thing should come into play. The second is a more factual aspect of the pitch, which is where you talk about your competitors, how the market looks like, what's the size of the market, who is it that you're targeting, who's the lowest hanging fruit in the market that you have, and create a competitive comparison which comprehensively shows how you are better than the existing players that are there. And then the third aspect are your facts, right? Which is basically where you talk about where are you today in terms of traction, whether that is in number of signups, amount of revenue, amount of features that you've built, who are the people involved, what is the team, what's the co-founding team, what's the leadership team, what are your unit economics, which is basically where if you break down all of your finances, then how much does one unit of your product sell for? So how much does it cost you to sell one unit of your product? And then finally revenue model. So there are there are established revenue models. So as an example, Client Joy is a low ticket vertical SaaS revenue model, right? It's very simple subscription revenue, which is going to vary anywhere between $9 to $49 a month. And it's meant only for agencies, and hence it's vertical, right? So there's not a lot of experimentation to be done with revenue model. In SaaS, it's going to be subscriptions. In e-commerce, it's going to be either commissions or advertisements, and so on and so forth, right? The second aspect of pitching is arguments, right? So, and I don't mean that you should argue with people. I mean, how do you make a compelling argument, or what is the least amount of data that you need to share about your company, about the parts that I referred to previously? What is the least amount of data they need to share with the other person, such that they want to investigate more, right? Such that they want to have the next meeting with you, they want to have a lunch with you, they want to invite you for a presentation, which could be an hour, 2 hour meeting, right? So the goal of the pitch is to not communicate and convince about your idea or your product at once to the whole room. The goal is to generate interest, right? It's a pitch is a trailer, it's not the whole movie. Now, how do you design a trailer such that people are interested in going to the movie, they want to investigate more into what are you doing? So figure out that compelling argument, right? The next key aspect of pitching is how do you establish authority, right? So whoever's listening to your plan, or reading your plan, needs to know that you are coming from a higher level of understanding of whatever it is that you're talking about. So as an example, when I say that at Client Joy we are helping 100,000 agencies grow, fulfill, and earn, there is nothing about the agency and freelancing market that you can ask that I cannot answer, right? Or my investor asks that I cannot answer. So I come from that place of authority because I've been doing this business for 7 years. I've been involved in this product for more than 2 years, and I've essentially seen enough things, talked to enough people, been through those experiences, that I'll be able to establish authority that when I talk about agencies and freelancers market, I know what I'm talking about, and the reader or the listener can put their trust in me, right? So a very simple example is before we started the presentation, I also have to establish authority here, right? So before we started the presentation, Swaroop gave a small introduction in terms of who am I, what am I doing. The reason why I put in an introduction slide for myself in the presentation is because I want to establish authority in terms of where I am coming from. Why should you listen to me, right? And so that's something that you should do in your business plans as well. You don't need to be rude about it, but you need to make sure that the other person trusts you, and that you show that you know more about that subject matter than them. And then the last thing, this is where most people goof up, is that their business plan does not have a call to action, right? If you know who the reader is, then you also know what you want them to act on, right? So you may know that, as an example, if it's a colleague or if it's a potential co-founder, then you want them to sign some sort of a co-founding agreement with you and then start working with you. If it's an investor, you want to raise funds from them. Whoever it is on the other side, there has to be a call to action that, hey, you've read this plan, you found this interesting, this is the next thing that you need to do now, right? So that's the first thing. So what do you want the reader to do after reading your plan? If they liked it, if they liked your arguments, if they liked it, you've established authority. The second thing is following up. Most people don't follow up. So more than 80% of deals close between the 7th and the 13th follow up, right? So typically what ends up happening is, I'll receive some pitch deck, and the mail will say, let's get on a call. I may be caught up with something else. I'll not respond. And then we don't take that conversation forward just because I was caught up with something else. I found the pitch deck interesting. I wanted to have the conversation, but just because I had something more important going on at that point of time, that opportunity has been missed for both the other person and I, right? Which we don't want to happen. So follow up until the other person says no, right? Which is another thing in India, is that people don't like to say no, right? And so you'll end up wasting a lot of time just pitching to them. And so the idea is to follow up with them over email, call, WhatsApp. Don't be irritating, right? Give them enough time to kind of settle down. Do follow-ups every 2, 3, 7 days. But then you want to email, call, and WhatsApp them and get them to say no to you, right? That, hey, no, I'm not going to invest in your company. Hey, no, I'm not going to be your co-founder. Hey, no, I don't think the business plan is going to work. Whatever the case is, our goal is to get an answer from them, right? That is the key. So follow up until that extent. Do not ask a couple of times and then move on, right? So these are some of the key aspects when you are doing a presentation. So just kind of a quick refresher. um, People don't care about you. You are the center of your own universe. They are the center of their own universes. The whole job of a pitch is to make other people care about whatever it is that you're working on. Key parts of the pitch is what we've already covered. Make a compelling argument so that the reader or the listener wants to investigate more and asks for the next meeting. Establish yourself as an authority so that the reader or the listener can trust you, and hears out whatever it is that you're going to say. Offer a call to action at the end of the business plan, saying that, hey, this is the next step if you liked whatever it is that I've shared with you. And follow up until you get a no from them. Don't leave conversations hanging, right? So while I say that, it's important to understand that no is not bad, right? Hearing no from people is the biggest time saver. You don't want to waste your time talking to people who are not going to work with you, right? You already do not have time. If you have come across some idea, there is a good chance someone else also has come across that very same idea and is working towards that. And if you hear no, do not get demotivated. Do not feel that this business plan may not work. Take or consume no from other people like a champion, right? Okay, acha, theek hai, you don't want to work with me, fine, I'll find someone else, right? It's like that dialogue in Ishq, right? It's hearing a no is like buses, ek jayegi, dusri aayegi, right? So just wait for the right opportunity. You need only one yes if you're pitching to investors, right? And as an example, so at ClientJoy we've raised 3 rounds. Our first investor, and that's how I know Swaroop as well. Our first investor is CII, which is the incubation center at IIM Ahmedabad, which is where Swaroop was before this. And then the latest round that we've raised is from a VC, right? And having raised those 3 rounds, I've heard more than 100 no's from investors and VCs. And this is the one most important thing that I've understood, that you have to be ready for rejection day in and day out. And this is just one last thing that I want to add to whatever it is that I've said previously. Just stop wasting your time on meaningless things and dumb people. There are enough meaningless things and there are enough dumb people around. If the other person doesn't have a plan, so if you are going to create a plan for yourself, then expect the same standard from the other person as well. If the other person is not going to stand true to your own standard, then you move on, right? So ask for the standards that you set for yourself from other people as well. The other people are not going to stay there, then just move on. There are a lot of people that you'll be able to find who will be able to add value to your journey. So just stop wasting your time on meaningless things and dumb people. I've done that for the first couple of years, when we were looking for mentors, when we were looking for early team members, when I was looking for co-founders, as a matter of fact. That you'll find a lot of people who have free time, and just don't indulge them into those meaningless conversations, right? And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So I wanted to share with you these couple of things that I've learned over a period of time. I hope this was helpful. I'd love to answer any questions that you guys may have. And over to you, Swaroop. So I think we have a question which says, from Anshika. It says, "Do you have some tips for competition as well?" So thanks for asking this question, here, Anshika. Like one of my so here's how I choose to think about competition, right? That our competition is if we have a direct competition, then they are way ahead of us, than where we are today. And so you may want to write them as a competition on your business plan, but I would recommend that in real life you may not want to worry a lot about them. The market is big enough. There are only a few sectors that exist, where you can have only winner take all, right? So there's an example. Search is an example. Social network is an example. Messaging is an example. These are some of the markets where the winner will have everything, right? However, if you're working in any B2B sector, you will have dominant players, but you'll not have players that will kill the other company, right? So you for every sales force that exists, which does more than I think $3 billion in revenue annually, there's always a small kind of a sales CRM company, based in a second tier city in a third world country, that's also doing like $1 million annually, right? So in B2B, you typically do not have winners, and losers. You typically have a lot of people. Some of them are dominating more than others, but I wouldn't worry about competition in reality. I would want to add them as a part of my business plan for sure, though. I hope I've answered the question. I think there's another question by Altaf. In planning, in business plan, on which thing we should focus if we're in B2B. If you're in B2B, for sure your unit economics, which essentially is going to talk about how one unit of your product is going to sell. And so what is the cost of acquiring a customer that's going to buy that one unit of product, and what's your cost of providing service, and what's the revenue that you will get out of it. I think that's the most important aspect of the business plan. If that is set, then everything else can be figured out, right? There's another question. If I have to set up a yoga center business, what are the things I should look up in the level of business, as there are many free classes happening as well. So this would be a business specific advice. Firstly, I should tell you and add that I have never run a yoga center. However, I've come across certain approaches. So one of the approaches that I've learned over a period of time is community-based selling, right? So create a community of people who are interested in yoga and enable conversations among them, right? You're not looking for customers right now, but if you build a community, so create something as simple as a Slack community or a Facebook group that just says yoga enthusiasts, right? I know of a cycling company that has created, cycling enthusiasts of Ahmedabad, right? Something as simple as that. And that has more than 24,000 people. Not all of them are his customers. However, he's enabling conversations in that community, in that group. And so over a period of time, he is positioning himself as a figure of authority in front of his potential customers when it comes to cycling. And the same can be applied to yoga as well, right? However, I have to say that I've never set up a B2C business that's a brick and mortar business, but this is something that I've done for Client Joy as well. We have a community of our users, which is where they talk about their problems, and we just enable those conversations, and we do live webinars and stuff like that. I think there's another anonymous question. How was your initial journey, like starting from ideation to implementation? So great question. Yeah, thanks for asking this. So So we basically start. We have three co-founders. So I have two other co-founders with me, and the three of us have been friends since school. Right, we worked on school and college and live projects, and then when we were at our jobs. So when I was doing investment banking with Citi, and Anupama was running her own web design studio, and Shashwat was working as a tech person in a startup. Three of us were still working on side projects, and so what I would do, and this is way back in 2014, I think, and so what I would do is since I was based in Mumbai, I'd go to these pubs, and I'll find the band that is performing over there, or the stand-up comedian who's performing over there, and I'd go up to him and say, hey, if you had a website, you may get more queries to perform in such pubs and such locations. 3 out of 10 people would say, yeah, let's talk. One out of those three, I would end up closing. I would pass on that query to Shashwat, who will then design the website, and then Anupama will code the website. And it was just a side hustle or a side gig that we were doing. Over the period of next 1.5 years, we realized that we are actually making more money doing this than our full-time jobs, and we were enjoying working with each other as well. And so the three of us left our jobs and started a web design studio. That then evolved into an IT service company, which is where we would do web and mobile applications. We'd build SaaS products, we'd build e-commerce marketplaces, we'll build fintech products as well. We worked with Aditya Birla Capital, Sony Pictures, Tata Communications, grew from 3 people team to a 50 people team over the next 3-4 years. And then we realized that there's another problem that we are facing. So we're spending a lot of time into just managing clients, and we're not able to do impactful work. So we reached out to our peers. And this is where we spoke to about 200 people from 33 companies in 14 different industry verticals, which is where we found out that, hey, this is a real problem. Other people are also facing this. And so the question that we had for ourselves was that we've built SaaS applications before, so we can do that again. We've also, ourselves been facing this problem. So what if we build a SaaS product to solve our own problem, and then just share it out there for other people to solve their problems as well? And so that was basically our journey from like starting to the idea stage. And then once the idea came along, implementation was fairly simple, because we already had a 50 people engineering team. And so we started building the product, started getting feedbacks from our users, and then that journey is still ongoing. So currently we serve about 1900 plus agency customers from 30 plus countries, and we are a 35 people team as of now. So I think that hopefully answers your question as well. I think we have next question, which is, can you please share your challenges so far in the journey, especially when you started Client Joy? Yeah, I mean, so there are a couple of challenges. First challenge is obviously, how do you attract the best talent to build a product? Sorry, the first challenge was that we were habituated building products for other people. So which is where we would be told what is to be built, and we would then build it. So the scope document was given to us by our clients, because we used to be an IT service agency, right, where we build web and mobile apps for other people. Now we did not have a requirement document. We had to build it ourselves, and the customer did not exist, because we had to essentially gather all the insights from the market and then start building it, gather some amount of insights from our competitors, gather some amount of insights from our own problems and team members. So that was the first challenge. The second challenge was giving up on the services revenue, right? So we had a very strong services revenue. As I said, we had fairly large customer base, and giving up on the relationships that we've built. For some of the customers, we had worked for more than 3 years, 5 years, right? And so giving up on those relationships, which were giving us consistent revenue. So I think those were the two kind of major challenges that we faced. Everything else essentially was something that we took upon, and things started becoming easier as and when we moved forward. I think Vidhi has a question. How did you connect your team to adapt your idea as this? So interesting question here. So we always start with why are we doing it, right? And so instead of telling other people that this is what needs to be done, we always start with this is a problem that exists in the market. What do you think we should do about it? And then we'll hear ideas across the room. and then we'll propose certain ideas. We'll kind of sculpt out what that idea could look like, and then share it with them as to what's the reason behind doing something. It turns out that when other people know what is the reason, then they buy a lot of things fairly easily. And so I think answering the why for other people, even if it is not asked, right, answering that why is of tremendous importance. So I hope the session was drove value for all the people who are here. I hope this was helpful in any way, shape, or form. If you have any other questions, please reach out to me on LinkedIn or check out yasha.in. Or if you are an agency or a freelancer, do check out clientshare.io. If you want to work as an intern at a startup, we are always recruiting. We're recruiting across our tech and marketing and sales. And so thank you everyone for joining in today.